Hi, it's Cindy. Here I am, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about modeling as an essential ingredient for any of your thinking routines to really take off, especially for the first few times that you use a routine when it's new or newer to students. You are going to want to show them what your expectation is so that they can rise to it. Otherwise, you can't be sure exactly what you're going to get. Teacher modeling is something that's super important, but it's also important to think about how long do I want to model, and then when can I start to release to students? So, I have an example that I'm going to walk you through. Now, our thinking routines for this week, there are two that you can choose between. One of them is this one, looking 10 times 2. All right, so this is one that allows students to look at a visual or an object for a period of time. They examine it, and then they write down 10 things that they notice about it. Then they look again, and they write down another 10 things. And depending on the complexity of the object or the visual that they're looking at, you could do this in several iterations. This is also one that might be nice if you started out as an individual, with individual students looking, and then maybe snowball over time to have them notice together. It's a possibility, just something to think about. Another routine that you might choose this week is See, Think, Wonder. Now, this routine I really think is at the core of so many excellent discussions. It's a great way to start students out and get them looking and noticing and thinking. It can be used at any point during a unit. I think it works well at the beginning. It can definitely work well in the midst or at the end. It depends on what you want to use it for. But anywho, I'm going to show you a couple of things. Now, this is a chart that I will also add to our resources. If you want to use this same chart, you certainly may, and you can adapt it in whatever you want to do. But for the See, Think, Wonder routine, if you're doing it digitally with students, or if you want to print this out, this is definitely a way that you can go. And so I've got the spaces all set up. Notice they're nice long columns, and so students can fill them up because that is the point. You want them to continue and continue and continue and keep thinking and keep thinking so that they really get a lot of ideas down. And of course, they're going to do that one part at a time. First for C, then they're going to make inferences based on what they saw, and then they're going to ask some questions, which may be related to their noticings and to their inferences, but they could also start jumping off on tangents and start thinking about some other things too. So this is a great routine. So you've got this chart, or this is one that I actually just cooked up using Google Gemini. By the way, in this course, I highly recommend using AI tools in order to craft note catchers for your students or whatever you might like to do. You can also use it as a thought partner as you're planning. I have no problem with that. I use it constantly. This is one that I just cooked up using Google Gemini. What you'll see that I did here is I entered this prompt, said based on this thinking routine, what note catcher can you design? So that the basic instructions are at the top and students have spaces or boxes to work within. And then I just put in the link, and this is what it gave me. Now, if I wanted to continue to think it through and go, no, I don't like that you did this, or no, I don't really like that, or whatever, I could definitely do that. But I was pretty happy with what it spit out for me. And then of course, once I've got my note catcher, I would delete this and think about it because there are some good suggestions here, especially this modification by age. That definitely might be appropriate, or vocabulary support. That might be good. And then look at this. It also suggests perhaps collaboration opportunities. So after this is done, you can either copy this information into a doc or you can just send it on over and export to docs, which is fabulous. And let's see. So anyway, I'm going to show you a little modeling, right? Now let's take a look. Here is an example of an assignment that I used several years ago with an 8th grade early U.S. history course. They were coming to me as 8th graders, and the last time that they had done anything with U.S. history was in 5th grade. In particular, they learned about the Revolutionary War towards the end of 5th grade. So that's like a 3-year gap. That's quite a bit of time in between. So when they first came into me, I wanted to see, what do you remember? Do you recognize certain things from this image, even if you've never seen the image before, does it remind you of any of your prior learning and what can you connect? So if this were the very first time out with students, I probably would start modeling it myself, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and use, now first I'm going to take a very close look, okay? What are the things that I see? And in fact, I'm going to copy this, and so that I'm not going back and forth between tabs, I'm going to go ahead and just put it up here. So as I'm doing my see, think, wonder, I can kind of go back and forth. So let's see what I got here. Ha ha ha, no pun intended, right? I am seeing, okay, icy blocks. I am seeing a boat with several men, all men, I don't know, on it. I am seeing an American flag with some kind of dull coloring on it. It doesn't look like the vibrant red, white, and blue, right? And then I'm seeing that it looks like the sun coming out of clouds. Sun coming out of clouds. I am also seeing, oh, there's this guy who's got this pole, and his pole, it's interesting, this little tip of the pole seems very close to this guy's face. And this guy is very focused, it looks like he's looking straight ahead, very focused. Okay, so I'm going to put here, guy looking straight ahead. And then there's a man with a pole in front. Pole lines up with the standing man's face. And then I'm also going to be looking at the fact that there is kind of like this curve or this dome of light in the midst of all this darkness. Okay, dome of light in the midst of darkness. And this is when I might pause and I might say, okay, students, you can see that I'm trying to really notice what's going on in here. And I could go on and on and on. That's one of the things about a See, Think, Wonder or a Looking times 10. You want to make sure, or Looking 10 times 2 rather, you want to make sure that you're providing them with a really rich text, okay? And typically it's going to be a visual. It's going to be some kind of painting or photograph or whatever. But I will tell you, you might want to do it yourself before you give it to students, just to make sure that the text is rich enough, that there's enough in there to see. Or can you really make a bunch of inferences or not? And of course, thinking about it ahead of time will help you with your model. It'll help you to steer it in the, no pun intended again, in the direction that you really are looking for students to go. All right. Now, at this point, though, I would invite students in and I would say, what are some things that you guys are seeing? And then as they're saying what they're seeing, I would go ahead and continue to write it down. And I would be sharing this with the class so that they all would be seeing what it is that that I'm doing, that I'm validating your thinking. I'm making your thinking visible, which is a huge part of critical thinking routines. All right. And then after that's done, I'd say, okay, guys, this is great. We've got this huge list. We would have this big, long list, right? And I'd say, okay, now we need to make some inferences. How do we make an inference? We take those things that we saw and we say, what does that make us think? So like, for example, I see this guy and it's not exactly center, but it's almost center in the painting. Like he's almost in the center. And then I'm wondering why? Why might that be? And then I'm thinking, okay, the tall guy who is nearly in the center is likely the most important person in the boat and in the painting. There's another boat back behind him, right? But I'm thinking he is the central figure. I'm also noticing the light around him. Okay, so I'm going, the light around him suggests that he is very special and maybe there's something of the divine there. Now, we all know this is George Washington, right? But maybe students don't know that. Maybe they don't remember that, or maybe they do. Maybe they're going, oh, that's George Washington in there. I see George Washington in the boat. The way that this is set up, it makes me think that this artist must have really admired him because he did blah, 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 blah. So really, with this pretest, it was showing me, what do kids really know about the American Revolution? What can they recall and tie in with this painting that they're looking at? Or if they couldn't remember anything, at least we're kind of jogging some thinking as to, okay, well, I see all this stuff. Oh, that was about the American Revolution. Oh, now I kind of remember. Oh, well, whatever. Okay, you get it. So light around him is special. Maybe there's something divine about him. And then I'm noticing, oh, well, gosh, it's not only one boat here, but it seems like they're having a hard time, and yet, even despite, all this ice and stuff, right? And there's a bunch of guys with poles. Maybe they're trying to break it up. So I'm going to say the guys with poles are breaking up the ice, and the man in the middle, who's standing, George Washington, is looking determined. Nothing is going to stop him. Okay, and we know this is crossing the Delaware, right? So now it's up to wondering, okay? And wondering, it could be about the way things are set up, about the colors that are used. It could be about any number of things, right? But again, I'm going to do a model first and share my thinking aloud as I'm going through and show students, okay, I'm still looking, I'm still thinking. And then with wondering, I'm going to go, okay, for wondering, why did he use the colors in the ways that he did? In the way he did. And then I'm going to think about, who was the artist, and was he fond of George Washington? Why? And then I'm going to ask things like, what was the purpose of this painting? And when was it done? And then I'm going to say things like, okay, well, I'm also wondering, where did it originally hang? Who was it painted for? And then I might think more on the actual choices, and I might start thinking beyond. So there's all kinds of things. But then you would invite students in again, and you'd say, okay, well, what questions do you guys have based on this? Whatever, right? And then let them continue on. Now, truly, this was a pretest, right? So I didn't model this one for students. However, I highly recommend that the first time you use this routine or any routine, model for your students. Now, keep in mind, I also could have done the same routine with this same painting. Wouldn't have been any problem, right? Pardon my doggie, if you hear her growling in the background. So I could have done initial observations. Same deal, still noticing. And then I could have maybe done a turn and talk with partners and then said, okay, now notice some more. Same deal though, you might want to model it. Modeling is really powerful, and it shows students what you're looking for and what your expectations are. I hope you guys have fun doing these thinking routines, and I look forward to seeing which one that you choose to do.